Setting up a new database in Neo4j in a Unix environment is slightly more complicated than in Windows. In Windows, we can just specify the startup directory for the database we want to use at startup. We just choose the correct folder and click Start. In the Mac environment or Unix environment, we actually have to modify a configuration file. And the reason for that is that Neo4j by design is meant to be just a single database environment. It's not meant to have multiple databases. They do have that functionality coming down the road, but for now it's meant to run just as a single database. One of the things that means is that you won't be able to switch databases while running. You'll actually have to stop, change the database, and then start again. And the way to do that in a Mac environment is going to be through a configuration file. So I'm in my Neo4j community folder here that I put Neo4j in when I installed it. And if we look, we'll see it's got a folder called Data. That folder is where the default database is created on installation. And so that has our database to use right now. If I want, I need to create a new database in a separate folder. A graph database is just a file within a folder along with a few other files like a log file, for instance. So if I create a new database directory, I can then tell Neo4j to use that directory instead. And that'll be my way of having a different database. So I'll create a directory. I'll call it newdb for new database. And now if I look, I should see newdb here, and there it is. And now I need to tell Neo4j that that's the one I want to use for my database. And the way to do that will be to modify a configuration file that can be found in this folder conf. So what I'll do is I'll change to that directory, and then I will look at the files that I have there, and the one that we need to modify is this one here, the neo4j-server.properties file. So with your favorite text editor, you're going to open that file. I'll use improved VI here. Make sure you open the neo4j-server.properties and not neo4j-properties. And the line I'm looking for is actually the very first uncommented line here. This is where it tells Neo4j where the location is for your database. And you can see it's in the folder data, and then the file name is graph.db. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify this file, and we're going to tell it, no, what we want you to do is use the folder newdb. And then by default it'll use graph.db for the name of your database. Since there's only one database in a directory at a time, you can leave that as the default name. So I will save my work. And it's always a good idea to go back in and check to make sure it did actually save the change, and you can see that when I go back in it did save the change. Okay, so I've created my new directory. I've told Neo4j to use that new directory. Now I'll go back down to my community folder, and what I'll do is issue the following command. The command that I want, let me actually show the folders we have. There is a bin folder here for the binary files that we use. That's where the startup file is located. However, Neo4j prefers it if you issue the command from your main folder, from the community folder. So what I'll do is I'll say run bind /Neo4j, and then I'll tell it start. And it'll check and find the correct version of Java which you've installed. I have Java version 1.8, so it says I can't find 1.7. It'll use 1.8 instead. And now you can see, you know you're ready to go when it says localhost :7474 is ready. And that's where we find our instance of Neo4j, through the web admin tool. So what I'll do is I'll go to a browser window, and now that I've started my server, when I run to that URL, I get my web interface. And if I take a look here in the top left corner, I look at what database I'm running, you can see it's running the newdb database that we just created. And that's it. We've started it up, and we can go ahead and start working with this database.